What's up, guys? Welcome back to Sit Down with Sid Podcast, Season 2. This is episode number 5. Our guest today is a certified functional medicine practitioner, a coach, chiropractor, speaker, and an author. She has helped thousands over the last 3 decades and over stop adapting their lifestyle to pain and chronic problems by focusing on the whole person. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Patricia Boulogne. Hi, Dr. Pat.
Hi, Sid. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Me too. I'm glad we have the same greatness.
I love that. Dr. Pratt, before we kind of dive into this podcast, would you mind giving us a little bit about your background, your upbringing, education, etc.?
Well, I am from the Midwest, originally from Michigan. I was born, raised, schooled for undergraduate, and then I went to chiropractic school in Atlanta, Georgia. And from there, I had a practice with my husband, who was a chiropractor. We're no longer together. And on Cape Cod. And which was like, vacation land, and everyone thought we were so crazy to go to someplace like that, but it was really great, and it was really foundational to be able to see people thrive, in that environment. And I went to school also for acupuncture in Florida and in Miami. And I've done a lot of other things. I've done a lot of volunteer work. I've, volunteered my services in the Special Olympics in Boston. I've worked Boston marathons and men and women's pro volleyball games, international windship surfing championships, the LPGA, and so much more. I did a lot of volunteer stuff for sports because that was my first love. And then, I had this really great teacher whose name was Jeff Bland. He's PhD, and what he said to me made total sense about why we weren't healthy. And I really deep dive into the functional medicine aspect. He is the father of functional medicine. And I used to tease him and tell him that I was stalking him because anytime he was within like an hour plane ride from where I was at, I would get on a plane and go see his conference. He's such a brilliant, and he was so inspirational. And because of him, I was able to help, even more, help people have better health, better lifestyle. I helped them be stronger so that they could have the strong mindset in every aspect of their life, especially wellness.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Great. So I just want to ask you, what motivates you as a doctor as well as a business person?
Well, what amazes me as a doctor is I feel really sad when I see people be sick when there's no reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
And or because I always believe that knowledge is powerful, but it's even more powerful when you know how to stack that knowledge and implement that knowledge into a step-by-step process to get you out of whatever hole you're in, or
Mm-hmm.
elevate you even if you're at optimal health, so it keeps you on a certain level and a certain note. um and so as a doctor, I just think there's a lot of there's a lot of solutions out there. And there's always something that you can do. You just have to be able to have the knowledge, to pick the right solution for you. Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't do one size fits all, coaching and mentoring. I coach with a mentor's heart. So I don't tell anybody to do something I don't do myself.
That's great.
Yep.
Uh,
And then
and,
you
and
asked about business, right? Is your
yes,
second
both.
question?
Yes,
The
that
thing
was
that
correct.
motivates me about business is, I think about service. When I think about business, I think about how many people can I serve today that need to have a breakthrough in their life and get unstuck and keep moving forward with a limitless plan, especially in their health and mindset. And there's a lot of people, and and there's only so much you can do. So that's why I try to do more coaching or platform speaking, from the stage, to be able to spread that knowledge a little bit easier, so that I'm able to touch people who are in audiences, and like today, your audience that I visually can't see, but I can feel them. So I'm really, um, that's what motivates me as, in business, is the ability to serve, and to be able to give when you can give, and then and then love what you're doing,
That's great. And
right?
who do you serve? I mean, what kind of clientele do you prefer to serve to?
I serve executives and entrepreneurs and busy professionals, and owners in that industry. And it's those people who like want to get to their greatest goal in less time, and I help them do that.
Why do you say the greatest goal in less time? Is there some kind of a correlation between goal and the time frame?
Sure, people, I can say, and it's like the differentiation between aspire and inspire and taking action. I can aspire like I want to be the CEO of Pepsi, even though I would never want to do that. But
Hmm.
let's say that is I'm aspiring for that. Unless I get inspired and take specific action steps, that inspiration makes me make a plan, have an action step so I can go from point A to point C and maybe find a mentor and a coach that's already done something like that so that they can say, you're wasting your time over here, go to the right instead. When you get to the end of the road on this one, you want to make a left and make your first right, and having that knowledge base community to help support you, to propel you forward, ignite and elevate where you're going. Does
I
that make
love that
sense?
answer. Yes, that's superb. I wanna talk about your book. Could you tell us a little bit about your the bestseller book and what's it about and your title and how did you come along with that?
Well, I got the title because I in around 2010, the CDC put out a report that 212 potentially dangerous chemicals were found in the blood and urine of every participant in that study, and there was over
Mm-hmm.
2,500 people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's huge, like every one of those 212. And that really made me, I was retired at the time. And then, I was seeing people walk around in Boston. I lived on Cape Cod, right? So there was like
Right, right.
nobody. I mean, you didn't like have like, 1,000 people trying to get into the subway all at once in Boston. And um, and so what was really prevalent like to me is that people were sick and they didn't know it. And I thought that, if I stay on the sideline, then I am as bad as the problem is the people who are putting toxic chemicals in the water and all these toxins and everything. I'm just like them because I'm not willing to do something about it. So it really pulled me back and gave me the impetus. Plus, my father died of a heart attack. And he was my biggest hero and my biggest inspiration. And when I went to chiropractic school, I thought about like, God, what could I have done to extend his life so that he would be around longer? Because that would have meant the world to me. It would have meant the
Right.
world to my family. And he was an entrepreneur and executive, who didn't eat well, didn't take care of himself, and so eventually he just had a sudden heart attack and he died. And, there's so many things that we do for our health that we don't have the right information or the right checklist. So we can go check, check, check this, and then go, now I can make an educated decision about what my next step is moving forward. And if I know what my next step is moving forward, then the question is like, how many people in this room want to be or want to have more health? And keep your hands up. And how many people who have their hands up are willing to invest in their health? Because a lot of people want health, but they don't want to invest in it,
That's a
and it's just
yeah.
like, and that's a sad fact. So, because a lot of people go like, well, my insurance doesn't cover it, so I'm not going to do it. It's like, well, gosh, I go, killing yourself very slowly is a good idea. I don't think so. So it's just the mentality around that, and changing the mentality around that so people have better options and they, and even when people ask me why I still do what I do,
Mm-hmm.
because I've been a physician for over 3.5 decades, they're going, why do you still do it? It's because I love to make massive differences in people's lives. I love to see people thrive. I mean, don't you? I mean, when someone's
Absolutely. Yeah.
happy, healthy, they're vibrant, they're full of life, it's just like they're almost like going, can I touch you? I want to absorb some of that energy from you and but that's, how, I think. And I think that you have to have checklists. I think you have to have, better ways to be healthier and be open to be taught them, and I think you need to keep your hand up and say you'll invest in yourself.
Yeah, that's true. And then how was the response of the people of your book?
Oh, yes, my book. Um, you know, My book is called Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? And in my business group, when I first launched this skinny woman said, I'm not sick, I'm not fat, I'm tired. Why would I ever want to buy your book? And I said, well, you know if you're tired or not, and you might know you're fat, because you could be skinny and still be fat on the inside. It's called
Yes.
DAT fat, you know, but you don't know if you're sick. So if you had a simple, questionnaire and a health assessment that looked at all your organ systems and organized them in a fashion so that you would know where your weakest link and strongest link, so you got to know what's going for you also, because you got to know what your backup plan is. Then you could do specific steps and plan action steps to fortify those weaker organ systems. And so what the book is an advocating tool. It's a workbook, uh, it's like a guide to, how to have better health and to identify where to start your health journey. So there's no confusion around it. It's just like, here's my weakest link. What can I do to fortify that? And because if you catch it beforehand, you get to age gracefully as opposed to one day waking up going, wow, how did I end up with a chronic illness and disease like Alzheimer's? 40% of the people who have diabetes are destined to have Alzheimer's. So I don't know anybody who wants to lose their mind. And people who have diabetes, it's reversible, especially especially diabetes two,
Yeah.
because it's a lifestyle induced disease. So if you know that you are exposing yourself to things that are, changing the, projectile outcomes of your health, why would you do them? It's just like, my father always said the best form of a diet. He did this one day, standing at the dining room table, and he kind of did this push up where he pushed himself away from the table. He goes, you want to lose weight? And he goes, get up and walk away.
Uh,
And that was his, but it was I was thinking, what exercise is that? What do you call that exercise? And I was really young, but it really, really stuck in my head, about that. And a lot of people just, they leave their health care in the hands of somebody else. And
but doc,
that's a huge mistake.
but Dr. Pat, I want to ask you something here. So, I mean, with all the things that have been going on, say COVID, now inflation, I mean, it plays a major role, on someone's mindset, right?
Hmm.
Maybe some people choose to eat unhealthy. Maybe some people um, use eating bad as an outlet, you know.
Hmm.
So, so do you think, is it a problem with the mindset, or is it a problem with the lifestyle? How can people cope up with that and relate with this scenario?
Well, let's define health first. Health in the Merriam-Webster's dictionary is all the organs functioning 100% of the time. That was the good news. And the bad news is that we don't know if it's not functioning 100% of the time. And the World Health Organization, says it's not merely the absence of disease or infirmities. And it has to do with environment. It has to do with your in the social ability. It's a bigger picture, and they revised their definition in the 80s, and they haven't touched that definition, since 1986. So if and there's three reasons why people get sick. Basically, it's trauma, toxins, and thoughts. And
Hmm.
traumas are things like, birthing. 9 out of 10 children have some type of cervical damage in their neck when they are birthed in a normal way, what's considered normal. And those, it's just like that's why you do chiropractic care very shortly after birth, because you want to reset the alignment of the bones, because of the trauma from the birthing process, and then you have other things like, doing the same thing all the time from the same side of the table, for instance. Like when I adjusted people, I usually adjusted from the left side. It seemed like more than the right side. So there's a way that my body moves that likes to be in a certain position. When I go the other way, it doesn't like it. And I'll have muscle spasms, for instance. And there's also like overuse syndrome. You hear about that in sports a lot. And then you also have bad posture, just like, kids with backpacks that don't fit them and they're hunched over. And, you can see that when someone's like driving a car next to you, you want to go,
Yeah.
sit up straight. Um, and then, you have toxins that come from the air that you breathe, the water you drink, the food that you eat, the chemicals that you use to clean your house and do your gardening with. Some of those chemicals and many of those chemicals are carcinogenic with larger exposures. And so you have to take a look at that. But the thing that's unsettling are your thoughts. And your thoughts can undo up to 7 to 10 times, what you did to correct the trauma, which is the mechanical alignment, and also the toxins in your environment. All you have to do is just be stressed out and your cortisol levels go up. You're stressed out, you don't digest your food, you get bloated. We've all been in that, that disagreement with somebody when you're eating about at some point in time, um, where, you end up not being able to sleep or you eat too late, or you eat the wrong kind of foods and your body really doesn't like those type of foods and it can't utilize them because there's damage in the intestinal tract, you know, but thoughts can undo that. Thoughts can create that. That problem. And so the biggest culprit, the one that really pay attention to the most are what your thoughts are. You must have command of your thoughts and you must be able to master them, or else they can create a lot of havoc in every aspects of your life. So the mindset part of it is essential because it's the fourth, pillar of health that I teach. The first is proper diet. The second one is proper exercise. The third one is proper sleep. The fourth one is positive mental attitude and positive mindset. And the fifth one is proper posture, which is biomechanics, structure, function. And so what happens is the brain controls and coordinates all functions of the body. And it does so like a Swiss watch and connects all organ system to each other. So when one slows down, another one slows down. And then, so like when one slows down, the other one picks up the slack. So it could be 10 years down the road and all of a sudden you have diabetes and you go like, wow, how did that happen? Yeah, I ate sugar, but people don't remember. It's like women, if you ever ask a woman who had a kid, it's just like 3 weeks later or 2 years later, she remembers going through that childbirth. It's incredibly painful, but you don't remember it. Your body, wants to shut that thought process down. So that's a good example of how thoughts are so powerful. But you have to have, in looking at the definition of health and the 5 pillars of health, because that's how you put the pieces of the puzzle of health in place so that you have the potential to have the best outcome possible, and managing that like positive mental attitude, which I call PMA, and positive mindset, which is PM for me, is essential in order to have, health. And then also having community.
That's a great answer. So what do you think about organic foods? I want to relate this to the second T, which was the toxins. In the 3 Ts, you mentioned why people get sick. I've heard, scenarios where organic has made my life better. Some of them, oh, doesn't do anything for us. How does that play a role in, say, removing or helping decrease the toxin part, in your 3 Ts?
Well, there's very specific requirements to be considered organic food. And organic food cannot come in contact with food that's not organic. And so when you're eating organic food, they're guaranteeing it doesn't have any pesticides on it. Pesticides cause cancer. They cause illness and disease. Water bottles that are sitting, sometimes you see them at gas stations sitting in the sun, never buy them. And you only if you ever use a water bottle as an ice pack in your, cooler, if you go on a picnic, you never want to drink it because it's the extreme heats in plastic that makes the phthalates go into the water and you drink them
Oh,
and they
wow.
never leave your body. And so that's why you don't do plastics. That's why you don't put plastics in microwaves, because that plastic, or especially styrofoam. And, and that I was at Airbnb one time and some guy pulled out a styrofoam container and put it in the microwave. Now I cringed and I left the room because styrofoam evaporates. And I decided I didn't even want to have the potential of being in the same room with any type of aromatic um, result from, microwaving the heck out of this little container. So, it's being, the greatest thing, like for instance, that you get from my book, one of the things is you get a greater awareness of your health and that's priceless. And then you're able to implement things that you learn from the book, like, look like, okay, here's my scenario. Let me go talk to my doctor or my coach, mentor, about what's my best steps to do in order to help support the weaker system.
Great. And is that how people can use your book as a guidebook and an advocating tool?
Yeah. Yep. And if they're confused by it at the very end, I have a calendar link that they can connect with me on, so that we can have a conversation about their particular results. And that's an easy, um, that's a very easy way to, spend a little time with me and for me to like draw a big picture. Because one thing I have am blessed with is the ability to take challenges and, simplify them and make sense of them, so that they're and give solutions that are simple, quicker, and safer.
And is there any magic sauce for making plastic lifestyle changes for people?
Well, there's no magic pill. People have got to decide if they're committed to their health and their well-being, and if it's important enough for them to be around for their family and their children and their grandchildren. And it's just like, because if, your behavior says everything about what your intention is,
That's great.
right?
Yes, Dr. Brad, I want to talk about Grim Reaper syndrome. You know, I mean, if people are sick and don't know it, how do they know they have something going on, which kind of relates to the Grim Reaper syndrome? Would you mind sharing some thought process on
Sure.
this?
Well, Grim Reaper syndrome is just people who have signs and symptoms that don't pay attention to them. For instance, people who have floaters in their eyes. Some those
Hmm.
floaters are either clear or else they're dark colored. In Chinese medicine, if they're dark colored, then you would look, it would give you a clue to look more into the kidney meridian function. And if it was clear, you would look more into the liver meridian function. And so it's like signs and symptoms, like people, when I ask people about their bowel movements, it's just like people get embarrassed about that. It's part of nature, it's part of life. And, it's just like, what color are they? What shape are they? How often? How often do you urinate? What color is the urine? What is the pH of that urine? Because you have to know the bottom line numbers, you have to know them. It's like choosing to either drive a jalopy for a body, which means you're like the first person you're kind of talking about, you're just putting whatever in it and doesn't care. And the person who has a Mustang who thinks that they can replace any part of their body anytime, right? Because Mustangs have parts on it that are always replaceable. um, or having a Ferrari. And if you have a Ferrari, you've got to feed it the right food, right? You got to have the right gas. You've got to take care of the wheel alignment. You got to make sure you have good tires, or you're going to kill yourself. And it's the same thing in life. It's when you get on that horse and you decided that, I now got the horse in front of the cart and I get on that cart, you got to decide, well, I've never even rode a horse before. How do you make this guy go giddy up and let's go? And the Ferrari story, I drove a guy's Ferrari one time and he neglected to tell me that the brakes were on the wheel on the paddles. And so he said, you need to slow down, but we're coming up to a curve. And I was in England, so I was driving on the wrong side of the road, so to speak. And so I said, well, where is it? And he said it's on the bottom part of the paddles. I thought he only meant one. So when I hit that one paddle to start to brake, it made the back end of the car swing and I smashed into a curb, which
Uh-oh.
which did thousands of dollars of damage. So we're going like, wow. And which shows you that if you're going to be really healthy, you've got to know what you're driving and you have to know all the parameters of how do you do it? How I like if I want to be a Ferrari, then what is it that I have to do to have a human being Ferrari? Because I like, and all those parts and organs have to work together. You've got to move, you got to think better, you got to feel better, you got to move better. Well, how do you do that? You do it through the 5 pillars of health and looking at like, what's a good choice? Because a lot of people don't make good choices. I had a client who asked me, and this is just recently, asked me what a protein was, and I'm thinking in my head, to me, proteins are, everyone knows what a protein is. Everyone knows what a carbohydrate is, but they don't. The truth of the matter is they don't. The people just buy food based upon that they're eating to feed themselves. They're not eating to nurture themselves. Because when
That,
you eat nutrient dense food, you are healthier, you're happier, you have better habits, you have more stability, you have longer endurance, you have higher energy, and you think better, feel better, and move better. I mean, who doesn't want that? I mean, and it's not hard to do, but people try to make it hard to do because they go, "Oh, I don't understand this," and then they quit. as opposed to opening a book and reading it or doing a little bit of research. Like, how do you combine foods that work chemically better? There's tons of food combining charts on Google, and just pick one that works for you. And it's just like you'll be surprised. And also, I always have every one of my clients start to make a ingredient list and look at what the ingredients are, like lemon juice, for instance. They go in and look at lemon juice, and you're thinking, well, it's lemon juice, and so what else is in lemon juice is sodium dioxide. And she said, after I read um, what sodium dioxide is, she said, I threw it away
Really?
because, it's just like if you look at the side effects, because it says that it's a chemical with a formulation of sodium and 2 oxygens, and it's used in ceramic glass. Why would you eat it? It's used in ceramic glass, and it's just like in sodium dioxide, if you're looking like for side effects, they say is it hazardous, and the substance is corrosive to eye, skin, and respiratory tracts. So it's like, you don't want to inhale it.
I
You
mean,
know, it,
everything. I can actually debate that because everything has some kind of, side effects, no matter what. But I think
everything.
everything in moderation is good, but excess of even anything is bad. There's a saying, excess of anything is bad. So, um, I'm just trying to understand here. I just don't want the audience to like stop using lemon juice completely after listening to this.
No, they
I-
just need to buy lemon juice that doesn't have sodium dioxide in
There you
it.
go.
So,
But yes,
right? Or use lemons, because the level of like, like you don't need more salt in your diet. It's everywhere. And, so like for people who are listening to your show, it's just like, don't stop and buying lemon juice, but buy lemon juice. Don't buy lemon juice that's mixed with other stuff, and other ingredients. If you're going to have butter, have butter. Ideally have it from grass-fed, grass-finished. There's a misnomer of that for when someone's eating grass-fed that's supposed to be so good for you. Well, it becomes not so good for you ultimately when grass-fed is not finished grass-fed, because they put grain in to buff up the weight,
right.
and puffiness of the cow so that they get from point A to point C, and they get more money when the cow goes through to be slaughtered if you eat that kind of stuff. And so it's just, it's buying real food. It's just, and I can remember my teacher in chiropractic school that taught us nutrition. He said everyone was using margarine because margarine, is now it's still on the market, and it doesn't have the right chemical configuration. In fact, the chemical configuration in margarine actually is carcinogenic. And so, but butter isn't. Butter is something that, and your body needs fats in order to function. Your brain needs fats in order to function, but it's putting the right proportions of that together with a carbohydrate, a protein, and a fat. So becomes an anti-inflammatory type diet.
That's a great point. A couple of other things I want to discuss, Dr. Pat. Number one is, I mean, post-COVID era, we all know the rise in mental illness, negative mindset. I mean, according to you in your own experience, like what's going on with people with their mindset and the mental health these days, and how can this be uh, improved? That's the most important question here.
Well, the way it can be improved is to throw your TV out and turn it off. That's one thing. And the reason for that is because there's so much misinformation and scare tactics that are used by the media, who are paid for their productions and supported by donations from certain foundations around the world. And so if there's an agenda that needs to be expressed, they usually express the agenda of the donor. And so as far as COVID goes, I think people really need to start calling it what it is. It's the flu. And it is a specific kind of flu. So like COVID, every person, they discovered COVID approximately at the end of the 50s going into the 60s. So the base component of COVID has never changed as a virus, and it's a virus, it's not a disease. And so, but
So
people,
do you really think it's a flu? Because I mean, as you said, the media are paid to, instill fear in people and spread their news.
think
Um,
about it. Let's be like make sense of that, right?
sure.
So if in 2018, there was a flu. There was no, but the flu still was COVID. It was the coronavirus. It was still the element of the virus. And so then in 2019, going into 20, there was a stronger virus. And it's questionable. I still don't, not really have not seen any clear research about that it wasn't man-made or that it was something didn't go wrong in the lab. And you never will know that, but in those types of laboratories, there's one in Washington, near Washington, D.C. also that has the same kind of component as in Wuhan. But when somebody has, it's like when you're looking at, and it only tests when you do the test is testing from your neck up. So in Chinese medicine, that's considered an exterior problem. When
Hmm.
you used to get sick or start to feel sick and you had a sore throat or you came home with a stomach flu, it always started in the throat and in your head. And then it went in, unless you ate something that was like food poisoning. And so it's an exterior problem. There's a lot of things that you can do with something that's exterior before it enters the body. How you know it has entered the body is because the mucus changes colors. And I'm not talking about from clear to white. I'm talking from from clear white to yellow, gray, green. Then it's very deep in your body. And the more heat that you have, the more the mucus gets congealed. And so when you have something like in the coronavirus, for instance, like that's a different virus than really the COVID. So, you stop hearing them talk about the flu. And also they found out that a lot of people weren't getting the flu shot anymore with big pharma. So and that was before 2019. And so when they came out with COVID, I just like, they should call it what it is. It's a bad case of the flu. It's like influenza. Influenza was a pandemic in 1918. And, it was like a lot of people were affected by this, and there was a lot of people that died. And a lot of those people who died had underlying conditions proven by the statistics by the CDC, proven that they had underlying conditions that when they got this, it just blew out their whole immune system. And they had a cytokine storm, and they had like too much going on. People who, survived, it is not 100%, but people who survived had less of, their immune systems were much more intact. So,
But
you know,
I just want to interrupt you on this. I'm sorry
go
about
ahead.
that. I just want to talk about this. I've been dying to talk on this topic with someone as brilliant as you are. Um, I mean, in 2015, Bill Gates predicted uh, COVID-19, coronavirus, as we
Why is
mentioned.
that?
Exactly. Why is that? We think, I mean, I don't know the percentage, but people have this perception this was used as a biochemical weapon, right? It was made in the
Hmm.
lab in Wuhan. Now they are, I mean, if you go on Twitter files, the leak is out there. Dr. Fauci paid for this, he knew it, etc. We don't want to get too much into the
Dr.
politics side.
Dr. Fauci made a lot of money off COVID,
Yes, but
off
we
the
don't want to get
pandemic.
too much onto it. But
Okay.
I
Yep.
just want to understand, you know, because I personally think that's the case, right? I don't watch CNN. I
Thank
stopped
God.
watching CNN in 2020 once Trump lost. Not because Trump lost, but because it's run by the left, as you said. They are
Hmm.
paid millions and millions of dollars to run this channel, spread the fear, and then on top of that, they came up with a vaccine which scientifically takes 8 to 12 years within 8 months. We
Hmm.
we took it. We don't know what we took, but
Yeah, absolutely. And then they're giving you boosters. So every year on the flu vaccine, they give people boosters. So that's why I'm saying COVID. You need to start calling COVID what it is. It's the flu. and there's a flu for
Then
there's
why is it so deadly if it's just the
it's
flu?
not deadly. You
I
know,
mean, you see the amount of deaths. I mean, once again, I'm just
in
giving you the numbers given by
2019,
the media.
I will guarantee you in 2019, there were a lot of sick people who didn't know it. And the only way that they knew that they were really sick is when they got sick because they couldn't pull out of it. There's a lot of people, unfortunately, it breaks my heart that that happened. But, it's just, but the truth of the matter is that a lot of people are sick and they don't know it. So when they have exposure to something that their immune system's already weak to begin with, people who constantly get colds, people who have digestive issues, and the people are like, very complacent. I lived in Washington, D.C. in
Hmm.
2010 to 12 or 13, something like that. And what I witnessed, I was so astounded when I lived there, how complacent people were. Like if something happened, it was like, oh, well, they did everything that they were supposed to do, and also the feeling of the elitism in Washington, D.C. I've never been a political person, but in Washington, D.C. is in your face. You didn't have any choice. So when I look at it, it's just like when people, and I've heard people starting to say they had the flu and that because or they say it's a variant. Variant is a much stronger, heavier word than a strain, but it's the same thing, you know. And when they, discovered quote unquote Delta or Omicron, right?
Hmm.
And it's just like it's a strain. But they called it a variant because if you keep people in scare mode, their immune system shot to begin with. And if you don't give people accurate information or you perpetually put out disinformation, then you have people arguing with each other and you have the discourse and you can see the results of everything that happened during that time. I mean, even wearing a mask. It's just like if the virus or what organism, doesn't matter what it is, can get in, it can get out.
And
And if
virus
some
has its own span of time where, as you said, it comes in your body, but within its own span of time, it also goes out of your body. That's
Well,
how
yeah,
virus goes.
and sometimes, there's a Chinese remedy that's very good for the beginning part of the flu. And I mean, and people had a lot of success with that in China during this pandemic at different times. And then, when you had a whole country that was clear all of a sudden, like, came back. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like, well, where was the source of the comeback then? I mean, it's just like, it isn't like, if you got it under control, because people have different levels of immune system and different exposures. I saw probably over 1,000 patients because I did fill-in work during that time, in people's offices, and I've had high exposure in that. I not ever got COVID
Knock
and
on the
that.
wood.
And so, people go, what do you do? And I said, well, I have, honey, raw honey that I keep, and that if my throat starts to get scratchy, or if I'm starting to get a cold, I'll take that honey in my bedroom in the middle of the night. If I wake up coughing, I just take a demi-tablespoonful of it and put it in my mouth and swallow it. There's a lot of medicinal purposes to honey, you know, and and I did things like, gargle with cider vinegar and water, like things over the counter. I never washed my hands in Perel because it's, I've seen somebody do an experiment where about after they wash the dish, they put a match to it and the thing lights up. And I'm going like, okay, and then, when, I saw malarkey happen, like, people would go grocery shopping and they were never asked to wash their hands before they went into the grocery store, coming from their cars. They touch everything and they leave. I'm thinking, and they're spraying, I was at a Trader Joe's and they're spraying the carts with tetrachlorohydro something. It was really toxic. It had benzene rings in it. And benzene rings are always carcinogenic. But as a chemical to prevent germs, being spread. You better have germs in your house. You better let a kid crawl in the grass, in order to improve their immune system naturally. So, it's just like, have I ever got a cold in the last couple of years? Sure, but it's just like I just think, getting back to normal would be calling it what it really is, which is the flu.
Uh, that's Dr. Pat. I just want to play this scenario real quick.
Okay.
Now, you have someone who reaches out to you, says, I have a healthy blood work, everything MR positive, everything is good. And now let's do the Grim Reaper syndrome here, right?
Hmm.
How can you help that person who says, my blood work is good? I don't think Dr. Pat, you can help me. I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate here, you know?
Well, you're doing a
Uh,
good job at playing like, the devil's advocate right now. But the thing is that people start having signs and symptoms and they don't pay attention to those signs and symptoms. Floaters in
mhm.
the eyes, like getting bloated after you eat, getting bloated only after you eat bread, having stomach pain, insomnia. I know somebody who had open heart surgery and they haven't been able to sleep a full night since then. And I said, like, change your meds, go back to your doctor, stop telling me about it, go back to your doctor. I didn't give you the meds and I didn't tell you to do the open heart surgery, which they thought that maybe they didn't have to really do it. And so, because once they cut, they can't go back, and the idea is to really test before you guess, and have, appropriate things. So the Grim Reaper syndrome is just things that, people don't pay attention to, and then suddenly realize later on, it makes, I should have paid attention to that. People who take over-the-counter drugs, any over-the-counter drugs, and when people do that, they're affecting how their immune system is responding, and and how they're, it's just like that. And weakening of perhaps the immune system. It depends upon like what it is, but a lot of over-the-counter drugs have side effects. So you look at Tylenol, if you ever look at what the organ system is that, it can cause failure in, like Tylenol relates to the liver and Advil relates to the kidneys, then it's better for you to use Tylenol if you use it for an upper body situation and Advil for a lower body situation.
Very
Because
interesting, actually. I didn't even knew this thing.
yeah, just
Because
go read the label on it. And on the label of like toothpaste, it tells you to call poison control if swallowed. So, I'm thinking like, okay, so there is this like there's things that could, and you can buy natural toothpaste. Why do they put carrageen? They put so many fillers and supplements and foods that don't need to be there in order to make them, be, palatable or whatever. There's so much sugar that people are ingesting in their system, and sugar is directly related to how much inflammation people have in their bodies. If they have inflammation, they're setting themselves up for that Grim Reaper syndrome because they're going to go like, oh, it's okay. Or my ankle only hurts every once in a while, and then 5 years down the road, their ankle hurts all the time. And they realize that, they have, they just had a simple misalignment. If they would have had their ankle adjusted, and taken care of a while ago, they wouldn't be having the problems that they're having right now. Same thing for food. You have control over what you put in your mouth.
So, Dr. Brad, couple of things before we wrap this up. Now, besides helping people elevate their mindset, with positive attitude, etc., do you use a medicinal approach, or do you use a holistic approach to treat people?
Do I use the what approach? What was the first one?
Holistic.
I always use a holistic approach to
Okay.
treat people.
Okay.
Do I think that there's a need for Western medicine? Absolutely. Like if you're starting to have a stroke, you don't want them to come to me. You want to go to ER, and is sometimes you have to take medications in order to stop that process, but there's things that you can do after that process. So you would like in that kind of medical emergency, you want to be taken to the right source. As long as they take you to the right source. My mother had a fall inside of a van and slammed her head against the grate in the back of the van. Her wheelchair just flipped over because nobody secured it. And they brought her to the wrong hospital. They brought her to a hospital that didn't treat head trauma. And so 2 hours later, she was shipped over to the other place. I'm going, that was 2 precious hours of her life. That someone made a mistake in their decision about what hospital to go to. And so it's annoying. And when I hear things like that I find those stories so upsetting.
So, Dr. Pratt, now, if people want to reach out to you after listening to this podcast, um, where can they reach out to you for
Well,
consultation? Or
I am excited to say that I launched my new website this week. And that website is Health Team Network, 3 words, all together, .com. And that's a good place to start. It's a good place to start your adventure. And it's full of a lot of information. There's some freebies on there and things like that that can help people, help them have even better and healthier lives. Other way to reach out to me, like we met each other on LinkedIn, so because I do a lot of B2B, and B2C. And, that's a good place to reach out to me and connect with me there. I invite you to do that. I have a Facebook personal page and a business page, and I have a private coaching or private page called Be Stronger Than Medicine on LinkedIn, excuse me, on Facebook also. And I usually let my coaching clients in there, and I'm accepting new coaching clients. I expanded my hours for doing that because I've been getting busier, and I want to be able to serve more people so that they can live the life that they always dreamed that they should live. Nobody's thought when they were 2 years old or 5 years old when they were growing up as a kid that they're going to have to ever be a burden to somebody. So let's reverse that. I'm up for reversing that. I hope anybody else is listening to this is also.
So Dr. Pat, we are going to put all this information in the description of this video. And also, guys, if you want to buy Dr. Pat's book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? It's available on Amazon, and the link will be in the description as well.
Thank you.
Dr. Pat, this has been really a blast. As a closing argument, if there is something you want to talk about that we did not discuss, or any message you want to give to our audience, please take it away.
Well, okay. I'll give you the mic back in 10 minutes. Just joking. I think one of the biggest things that people can do is to be hydrated. And, for a simple over-the-counter, hydration. So how you figure out how much water that you need 50% of your body weight, divided like I weighed 100 pounds, I would have to minimally drink 50 ounces of water. Now, if you take that water and you put a little bit of lemon juice in it, it raises the right kind of acid in your body, also makes your body more alkaline so that you can express better health. And being hydrated helps the brain because it helps the brain detoxify. It helps the joints, the muscles, digestion. It helps, your skin. There's so many like great benefits of, being hydrated. And I say that all the time. I usually start when I'm walking and recording, when I'm exercising in the morning. I always start with like, make sure you stay hydrated because it's just a simple, easy thing. It helps you sleep better. You just don't want to drink, a quart of water before you go to bed. You want to drink it like at 6 o'clock and then go to bed like 9 or 10, so that you end up not having any water like in the last 2 hours that you're up.
Got it. Dr. Pat, this was really a great podcast. We learned a lot about you, how you can help people. And we want to thank you from our side for being a guest on our podcast. And we want to wish you all the very best.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. I love being here. I'm glad we did this.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.